think there's always this weird moment with YouTube and Zoom where I don't know whether I'm actually live or not, but I think we are now. So welcome everybody. Welcome to LAMSIG Live, and we're absolutely over the moon to be joined by Dr. Sarah Mercer.
Thank you, Paul. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me to join you.
Thank you for letting us steal a few moments of your time. Very valuable. You've been pretty busy on other talks already as well.
It's been a bit one of those days, yeah. Let me talk about well-being. I shouldn't be allowed to talk about well-being.
Yeah, brilliant. So, Sarah, you're the head of ELT methodology, professor of foreign language teaching at the University of Graz.
Yes, that's right. So it was really interesting, Paul, because you asked me about my leadership roles. And I realized I actually have quite a lot of leadership roles, but I never, ever identified as a leader. And it really has really prompted me to think this last week, since you asked me, I kept thinking, well, I'm not really a leader. And then I thought, well, I'm head of the institute, that's 90 people. I'm head of my department, that's 20 odd people. I'm president of an association with several hundred people. So maybe there are some leadership roles that I have, but it's funny that I never identified as such. And I don't know why.
It's a good point. When I received your message saying, well, I consider myself not a lead, I thought, really? Seriously? But humble, obviously, in that, it's...
I don't really know why. I think it's probably, and of course I'm leading big research projects with research teams as well. And that's probably where I feel the leadership most directly. Because I think in some of the other roles that I have, there's a big team of people working together. There's a lot of autonomy, and I'm not particularly in the research roles. Maybe I feel it a little bit more as principal investigator on some of the research teams. Then I feel that leadership identity a bit more. And maybe it's the type of leadership that I'm involved in, but maybe it's also perhaps that other identities are stronger for me, more salient for me first and foremost before I would fall back on any identity.
Yeah, no, good point. I'm going to bring you back a little bit in time. How, whether it's leader or manager or so, but how did you get into the role that you're in?
Yeah, I wonder that myself. Who let me loose? Why would you let me loose? Yeah. I can honestly say, and I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, and I think it's a reflection of just good luck in your career, is that I just did things I enjoyed. I just said yes to things, and I'm a little bit like a magpie. Something shiny and interesting. Oh, I have to do that. And that's really interesting. I must do that. And so I just followed things I was interested in, did projects that I wanted to do, worked on stuff, and I'm not suggesting this is what people do, not at all, but I never had a deliberate career plan. It just kind of happened. So I'm not suggesting at all that that's what people do. I think having a career plan is very helpful for some people, but for me, it was more, I just did what I was enjoying and what I was excited by and what I wanted to try more of. And I say this as a woman very clearly. I was also brave enough to say, well, I don't mind if I fail or get it wrong, but I'll try. Because I think sometimes the fear of failure or the fact that they might turn me down or they might say no. And I'm just thinking, well, if they do, they do. And, I'm not, I'll go to bed and sleep and wake up in the morning and I'll be fine. So I think a little bit of courage to sometimes do things that are a teeny tiny bit out your comfort zone. Put yourself forward for things that maybe, am I really ready for this? Can I really do this? Well, I'll just try and see. So I think there's a little bit of that plays into a bit of good luck, of course, is always part of that ingredient, and following my passion and all of it. And I ended up here.
That's it. Very interesting. You touched on so many valid points. One of them sort of made me think of, I think it was Richard Branson who said, if somebody offers you an opportunity you're not sure about, say yes immediately, then work out how to do it. And I think your comments there kind of said, yeah, go for it, have a go.
If you want to do it and you're interested and it's a teeny tiny bit out of your comfort zone, do it anyway. Because that's how you grow and that's how you learn. And the bizarre bit is we know this about teaching and learning. We all talk about zone of proximal development and doing something about it. And yet for us, I think we sometimes think, you know, we need to play it safe and we don't want to get it wrong, and you know, people have got expectations of us, but we're just the same as any other learner. We still need to keep learning, we need to keep growing, we need to keep pushing ourselves to try new things. And I
Mm,
think and I know this probably is a little bit controversial, but I do think women are socialized to be more brave and safe, and maybe not put themselves forward. I think the classic Sheryl Sandberg, despite all the comments about that, about leaning in, was this notion of don't be afraid to be part of it and to lean into those opportunities and try them. Um,
mm.
and yeah, I think having the courage to make mistakes along the way and learn as you go is a bit, you know, part of how it is.
It's an interesting comment you've made, and one that I think has been repeated by other people that have joined us on LAMSIG Live as well, is but as a manager or a leader, we're often seen as, well, we have to lead by example, so we have to be perfect. There's this growing sense for a few years now to just, as a manager, say, I'm human, I'm perfect,
Oh,
I'm not
absolutely.
perfect.
Absolutely. Because if you allow yourself not to be perfect, you allow others not to be perfect.
Mm,
Otherwise, you create this condition and this sense that we're all aiming for perfection. If you say, you know what, I'm human, I get things wrong, and I'm going to learn and I'm going to try, and I'm happy for you to tell me when I'm making mistakes and tell me when I'm doing it wrong, and I'll try and get it better. I think that openness allows others in your team to do the same. And the
mm,
worst thing that I think you can have, particularly in a team in education, is this idea I've got to get it perfect, I can't make mistakes, because that's the complete antithesis of psychological safety.
mm,
Psychological safety, I'm sure you're familiar with this, is for me an essential notion in any organization, but also obviously particularly in the classroom. This came from studies that were done in healthcare, and they found that there were more instances being reported of problems in this particular two hospitals, say. I'm probably simplifying the research grossly here, but still. And in the one hospital where there were more reports of issues being reported, there were fewer deaths and fewer instances of serious problems. And the woman
mm.
researching said, well, this seems very counterintuitive. What the hell's going on? And it was because people in this institution were feeling safe enough to report problems, and these problems were dealt with before they became big issues.
Okay.
In the other hospital where things were not being reported because people were like, oh, I don't want to be the one to mention it, and I don't want to speak up, and I don't want to cause trouble here. Things were ignored too long, and then bigger problems ensued and bigger issues ensued. So psychological safety came from that research, and is the idea that you create an environment and a climate in which people are not afraid to make mistakes, not afraid to take risks, willing to speak up, willing to ask questions, willing to question things about themselves, willing to be vulnerable, but they feel
Mm,
safe.
mm,
They
mhm,
feel that they can do that. And I think it's important for leaders to feel that they can do that themselves
mhm.
and model and create that kind of environment for their staff, because that's where learning takes place.
So, to summarize, you might say, well, a leader by making mistakes is actually leading by example.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. I mean, if you're always making mistakes, you've got a problem. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
there's
problem
a
of competence there. So, you know, if you're always making mistakes, I think, you know, your competence may be called into question. But I think that you know, the vulnerability to say, you know, I don't really, you know, that this one's on me. I'm really sorry, or I don't really understand that. I think we need to explore that. I need some help to try and understand what you're
mm,
saying. I think that kind of vulnerability and humanity creates a climate of safety that helps
mhm,
other people to say, Sarah, I'm not sure that I understand, or Sarah, that one's on me. I'm sorry. I overlooked that. And you say, okay, fine.
mhm.
None of us are perfect, and I'm not perfect. I can't, you know, that's humanity.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. That's a good point. I remember saying to teachers that I used to well, be in charge of as an academic manager is, yeah, I'm, you know, humans are not perfect, and I'm more human than any of you. You know, so, uh,
I definitely
um,
fall in that category.
you also touched upon another point there, which has just escaped me. Um, I said about being brave, a brave leader as well. Yeah, and creating your. You said a certain amount of luck, but you also said about, well, doing the things that you're passionate about. In
Mhm.
and it kind of struck a massive chord with me as well. And I, reflecting on my sort of journey to where I am now, I kind of came to this conclusion that touched upon your idea, which was I possibly created my own luck by being passionate about a particular thing that people looked at me and went, oh, this guy knows about this. Oh, do you want to come and help us with something that we're working on because you know about it? And I wasn't looking up at that time. I was looking down at, I'm passionate about this. Would you say that reflects your experience?
So that's one of my favorite books was Joe Simpson, Touching the Void. So he's a climber, and that's the whole story to Joe Simpson. And he talks about exactly that he said his hard work and his diligence and his commitment and his passion and his drive created opportunities, which was his luck. But so it's about also, creating those opportunities through your passion and but also being brave enough to seize those opportunities when they come your way. So and sometimes you can be working really hard and really diligently and passionate about what you do, and those opportunities, you need a little bit of synthesis of environmental affordance and your own personal drive. Sometimes those opportunities may take longer to come or may not come, but I think it certainly can contribute a lot to generating opportunities which you can then take hold of.
Okay, thanks. Again, bring you back to an earlier version of yourself. If you could go back in time to, the Sarah many years ago, what advice would you give as you were beginning your journey?
Just stop worrying about everything.
Okay.
Most of the things you're worrying about, you don't need to worry about. You're just wasting energy and time. Most of the things are not really things you need to worry about. You've not got existential issues. And most of the deadlines, the world is not going to stop turning if I hand in something late. It's not the end of the world. And most things can be talked about. So open the conversation. So I think I would probably tell myself to worry a little less. Not that you shouldn't be concerned about things and that there aren't things that maybe you should worry about, and it's not there, but most things, a vast majority of the things I was perhaps worrying about were really not worth the energy and time. I could have invested that energy and time in other things. Some things needed to be worried about, but a lot of things were, with the gift of hindsight and time and distance, not things I needed to be quite so worried about.
Do you think that that's only possible with hindsight or with experience in life?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so there is a joy of getting older, is that you care a lot less about what people think about you. That is true. So there is this joy of getting older where you're like, you know what, take it or leave it. It's your choice. So there's definitely that age issue that plays into it. Some of that's easier with retrospection and with experience and with confidence. But I do still think that sometimes I have to very meta say to myself, Sarah, now come on. In the grand scale of things, is it worth giving yourself a sleepless night over? No, it's really not. So let it go. Just give it some perspective.
Perspective. That was the word I was going to make. That's what I tend to
so I think that being able to put things in perspective does come easier with age and experience, but I do still find now that it is something I sometimes have to have a little word with myself and say, get some perspective about this woman,
That's interesting. Yeah, no, perspective is important, isn't it? Yeah. So you were talking to me earlier about a study that you're working on at the moment. Is that what's keeping you busy right now, or are there other things?
One or two things. I always say I'm either the best or the worst person to talk about well-being, because depending how you look at it, because I find it difficult. I'm sure there's a reason why I started to research this topic many years ago. It's probably because I do find it difficult. I've got a lot better with time, maybe. I've got two big research projects at the moment. So we've got quite a lot of research funding, which is very good, great for my department and my team. I'm very proud to work with this fabulous team of people in Graz. We've got two big research projects. We've got a lot of other smaller research projects that are permanently ongoing. We are working on things like group dynamics at the moment. We're working on learner engagement. We're also looking at learner embarrassment. So we've got a number of other studies going, but the two big studies we have at the moment is looking at the contagion in the emotions and engagement between teacher and learners in an in-person context and an online context, and comparing what emotions are experienced, how engagement is experienced for the teacher and for the learner, and what levels of contagion there are between teachers and learner and amongst the teachers. It's a mammoth study, and we are experiencing great humility and learning at the moment about the methodological choices we thought we were going to make and that we're now making. And the second study I'm very excited about is looking at well-being, but looking at how teachers with high well-being teach language and whether they enact different practices than teachers with low well-being. So there is an assumption and there's an expectation from everything we know from the literature and from stuff in general education that you're going to have better relationships, you've got more patience, you're probably likely to engage in more creative methodologies. But we want to really bring this to language teaching and look at what are the language teaching practices and mediate for personality. So try to moderate the findings, but it's really the well-being that is the defining factor and not the personality. So that's another larger study, but we're very excited about that because that also then looks at this over time, and again is going to look at the relationship between teacher and learner well-being and how that's experienced and the degree of contagion about that, and how through what pathways does teacher well-being affect learner well-being.
Very interesting. We'll be looking forward to reading that research.
Me too.
Yeah, and keeping us updated as well. So yeah, you're doing so many things, but there's something else on your timetable for next month. I think you're coming to Brighton.
I am.
Yeah,
I'm
your
very excited.
Conference talk, and we're very, very, very excited. Looking forward to your talk on managers walking the talk of well-being on Monday, 20th of April. Now, without giving too much away, because you want to get people, we want people to come and hear the talk. What's the focus of that talk?
So we're going to talk a little bit about what we mean by well-being. We're going to talk a little bit about why teacher well-being matters for learner well-being and general satisfaction at the centre. But I really want to talk about manager well-being. So walking the talk in terms of, we know it's called the cascade effect, that the leader, their emotions and their well-being sort of cascades down basically to the level below. And that model has been used a lot to explain why teacher well-being is important in the classroom, and all these things that I've just talked about, these processes of contagion that we're looking at in research. So how, in what ways does this happen? So we still don't know much about those processes, but we know that there is a contagion between teacher and learner.
Mm-hmm.
Also know that there is contagion between the leader and the teachers. So leader well-being, manager well-being cascades down and affects staff well-being. Mm-hmm. And that's about, you talked before about, in vulnerability, walk the talk, be the role model. If you can show some humility and a willingness to get things wrong and to work on and have an attitude of learning, it makes it easier for your staff to do it. If you have an attitude of well-being matters and it's important, not just for me, but for the institution, when you enact that, everybody benefits all the way through the system. So, and very often the last person's well-being that we talk about is the manager themselves. So again, it's just the exact parallel between teachers and learners. The reason that we had a problem with teacher well-being and we have excessive burnout is because the focus is always on what can we do for the learners. Mm-hmm. With managers, it's a complete parallel. We don't talk about manager well-being. We talk about what can we do for the teachers and what can we do for the learners. So, you've got two audiences. And managers get almost completely overlooked, and they're caught in that magic space between parents, teachers, learners pressurizing from below. And then you've got policy or institutional management or funders or whatever putting the pressure on from above. And then this managerial level is often a very isolated, lonely position caught between the two. So I think that it is also high time that we had some conversation about manager well-being, and that in the same way that I've had to battle to get teachers to accept that their well-being really matters, I think we still have that work of convincing managers that it is not an indulgence, it's not neglecting their job, that they're not being a bad role model, they don't look lazy, that it's not whatever, to get them to understand that if they can enact and model positive well-being practices for themselves, it will put them in a better position to deal with things, but it will also be a great model for their staff. That will generally filter down through the system. But it's very often, first and foremost, it's an attitudinal change. Before we start talking about the practical strategies, it's, if you like, giving yourself permission to attend to your well-being. Allow yourself to recognize that your well-being is important for everybody, that not just for you, but everybody benefits when you start to take your well-being seriously.
Yeah, it's all the oxygen mask on the aeroplane idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Put yours on first, and
first.
you can't pour from an empty cup. It's this notion that how can you support others? How can you be an effective leader if you're burned out, frazzled, and overworked?
Yeah.
You can't.
That's a good point.
It's good, depending on your understanding of good leadership, but good leadership is about being able to support people and provide that climate and provide guidance and direction and have a vision. And if you want to do those kinds of things, you have to have some reserves. You need some energy and some capacity to draw on. And if you're at your wit's end, you will not make the best decisions, inevitably.
Very good point. So very good reasons to come and hear your talk at the pre-conference event on the 20th of April in Brighton. One last little question.
Yeah.
I don't think you're expecting this one, so sorry. What do you do to demonstrate to your team that you focus on your well-being? And
as I said, do as I say, not as I do. I mean, my team will be the first to tell you. I hope that I'm also respectful of boundaries, time and space, otherwise, for myself and for them. And there are also times when I'm not available. And there are times when I insist that they're not available. We have very open, frank conversations about well-being. So I think that's one thing we are good at in our team, is we do talk very openly about well-being. It's inevitable. It's one of the focus of our research. So it is not. It's not a hidden topic. It's a very open topic. So I think that's one of the very good things we do, is that we have very open conversations about it, and that people will say, I need some time for this, or I've got too much on at the moment and I need to cut back and do something else. And so I think that's okay. That communication space and making well-being a topic everyone feels comfortable addressing directly is also part of that.
So it's key, isn't it, to create that that atmosphere, that culture where we're talking about this. That's fine. Sarah, I'm not gonna. We could talk all day. I'm sure you so much to share with us, and thank you very much.
But lovely to
don't
chat.
Want to steal any more of your valuable time. Thank you very, very much, and looking forward to seeing you in Brighton on the 20th of April.
Me too. Look forward to seeing you, and hope